Hello and welcome to the Bulletin with UBS on Monocle Radio. Each week, the sharpest minds and freshest thinkers in finance take you beyond the numbers and hype, right to the heart of the big issues of the day. This week, we're exploring the findings of the 2025 UBS Global Entrepreneur Report. This is the first UBS report which has actively surveyed the opinions of entrepreneurs in the bank's client base and industry leader network, soliciting their views on a wide range of key developments that may shape the growth of their industries and their personal wealth. In the survey, the cohort was asked about the digital technologies that offer the greatest opportunity to share their main concerns and their specific wealth management needs as they look to the future. Here to make sense of the findings for us and to share some insights from global entrepreneurs about their mid and longer term outlook is a good friend of the show, Kiran Ganesh. Kiran, as regular listeners will recall, is Head of Investment Communications in UBS Global Wealth Management. Kiran, welcome back to the show. Always good to talk to you. And really interesting to unpack some of the detail from the 2025 Global Entrepreneur Report. And let's start at the beginning with that. What is the GER all about? And I'm interested, to whom did the bank speak to gather the data and insights that actually helped to put the piece together?
Yes, so I think people often think about UBS as a bank for very wealthy individuals, but sometimes it's neglected where that wealth comes from. And actually, many of UBS's clients are entrepreneurs or business owners. And we thought it was interesting to connect with this group to really hone in and understand how they're feeling about the current economic environment, the current market environment, and to really understand what's on their minds right now. So we were able to connect with this group and entrepreneurs representing businesses with hundreds of millions of revenue per business and billions in total, to try and identify some trends and issues that they're currently facing.
Yeah, and let's kind of dive into the report itself, Kiran. One thing I always find useful is sort of zero straight in on the sort of executive summary, because it helps a sort of lay reader like myself draw out some of the key findings. Just give us a couple of the kind of key headlines. And I always think it's interesting whether these are things which confirmed what you were anticipating or surprised one way or t'other. Just give us a couple of the headlines.
Yes, I think one big one was that entrepreneurs are interested in increasing the amount of investment that they make in their own businesses, both over the next year and the next 5 years. And we saw that entrepreneurs were answering in the affirmative when we were asking that question. And we thought that was interesting just in the context of course, the political uncertainty that's out there, the economic uncertainty in some regions, that entrepreneurs were still willing to be putting more money into their businesses. And part of the reason for that, I think, is, one, that these are entrepreneurs, they're business owners, they're interested in growing their businesses, interested in creating more value for their customers. And so, those investment needs, are designed to help support that. And I think the other thing is just that we did see something of a regional divergence that, of course, there is political uncertainty in a whole range of parts of the world. But in the US, we did see slightly higher levels of confidence, where perhaps you've had a stronger economy for a period of time, and also maybe some businesses also looking ahead to potential deregulation or changes to the tax code that may support them. Of course, some of that has to be offset by some of the uncertainty around tariffs, but general trend was that businesses were looking to increase investment over the coming years.
One other thing that struck me as quite interesting, Kiran, was that there was a significant majority of this cohort who were keen to seek external guidance surrounding potential exits from their business. Now, again, I guess that probably corresponds with expectation, and there's obviously pragmatic reasons behind that. But I thought that was also just interesting to remark upon.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting to note that we did see a number of entrepreneurs who, when we asked them about what they saw as the next phase for them in their careers, that we saw more than usual were looking to, instead of being a serial entrepreneur, we're looking to transform towards being perhaps a venture capitalist or an angel investor. And we did think that was interesting in the context of all of the technological changes that are out there, that perhaps because of the required technological expertise or technical expertise, required to be starting a new business today or being competitive in a new business today, that we saw, more of those entrepreneurs thinking about, partnering with, other firms or going down that more investor route as the next stage in their entrepreneurial journey, rather than starting a new business. So we did think that was quite an interesting trend that came out of the survey, of course, against the backdrop of AI as being a really important theme.
Well, yeah, we'll come to AI in a second, Kiran. One other thing I just wanted to check in, it was interesting to me that there was another sort of common characteristic amongst this entrepreneurial demography, which is they don't always prioritise, indeed many do not seem to prioritise building up their own wealth. And this comes back to what you said at the top, because they seem to have this deeper understanding that to build the full potential of a business, reinvestment's really important. Talk to me a bit about that, because I guess that does show a sort of a different mindset, again, than perhaps one might anticipate if sort of interrogating this area.
Yes, and I think it comes back to the nature of the group that we're talking to as entrepreneurs, business owners, willing to take risks, high confidence in their own business, high degrees of expertise and knowledge in their own industries. So, willing to continue to reinvest money within their own business and their own industry to try and grow. And, I think we've seen from our own experience with entrepreneurs that this is often the most effective way for them to build wealth, because many of these businesses have, of course, grown to become very successful. Of course, once businesses do start to get more mature, that's where we as a wealth manager would consider that diversification does start to become more important, and looking for a broader range of growth opportunities rather than just a single business does make sense. But we did also find it interesting in the survey where we asked entrepreneurs that when it comes to your private wealth, do you like to take less risk, more risk, or the same risk? And actually, the majority said about the same with their private investments as with their businesses. And again, we thought that was quite an interesting insight into the mindset of many entrepreneurs, because we would have expected them to perhaps say that they would take less risk with their private investments. But that appetite for growth and that appetite for opportunity seems to extend beyond their own business and into their private investments as well.
Yeah, indeed. Now, let's talk a little bit about the outlook. And obviously, there were a few sort of core areas here at Kiran, whether it's looking at, investment, the pounds and pence, people, certain key challenges. You did mention AI already. Give us a sketch around how, what kind of metrics, what kind of sectors, themes were informing the sort of medium to long-term view of this interesting cohort.
AI was a big part of that, and we did see a majority of entrepreneurs saying that they saw AI as potentially transformative for their business, both from a efficiency standpoint, a competitive standpoint, but also being able to create more value for their customers. So AI clearly seen as important. But we thought it was interesting that it was also balanced with investment in people, and we saw that the majority of entrepreneurs were also looking to try and grow their workforces over the next years in concert with those investments in AI. So really that idea of AI-enabled people rather than a trend of AI displacing people. So we thought that was quite an interesting development. They did highlight some challenges in bringing on staff, retaining staff, so hinting at a continued tight labour market, which we know is the case in the US in particular. But that general trend of, yes, investment in AI, but also investment in people was something that came through.
And what about some of these other kind of secular themes, which we often chat about on this programme, Kiran? I guess themes like sustainability. I guess if entrepreneurial folk are taking a long-term view for their businesses and for their sectors, they need to think about sustainability in every respect, whether that's, of their businesses as going concerns, and of course, the things we think more about when it's applied to climate crisis and so on. Did you get any interesting reflections in terms of how sustainability and thinking about those kinds of themes are impacting this space?
Yes, I think there has been something of a shift in this space in recent years as well. And I think it's fair to say that sustainability as a topic in general has become probably a bit less fashionable in the last couple of years. And of course, there has been a number of parties speaking out against it in different parts of the world. But what we saw from the entrepreneurs was really a continued focus on sustainability as it comes to business. So creating a business which is sustainable, creating a business which isn't making a significant impact on the planet, creating a business which is aligned well with the values of the entrepreneurs in question. So that really still did come through. Perhaps what we saw a bit less of was the sort of sustainability focus as it comes to sort of, compliance and reporting and showing that we're being sustainable. I think that become less of a focus, but, I think in our view, that's not necessarily a bad thing, provided entrepreneurs are continuing to focus on the real stuff of making their businesses sustainable to grow for the long term.
And Kiran, you made a reference earlier to the sort of degree of optimism in different geographies, and again, perhaps unsurprising that the US cohort was I think the most optimistic. I think it's sort of north of 70% of entrepreneurs in those markets saying they were very or somewhat optimistic. Just give us a quick global sweep, and again, were you and your colleagues, I don't know, surprised by some of the findings, or did it broadly accord with how you yourselves gauge expectations across those different geographies and markets? I don't know, even if you're looking through another prism, for example.
Yeah, so not particularly surprising. So I think if we look at markets from an investment standpoint, then we are ranking them as US looking most interesting, followed by Asia, followed by Europe. And that was really mirrored by what we heard from the entrepreneurs in terms of where they saw the greatest investment potential. Again, I don't think that's sort of too hard to explain. The US economy has been performing well for a number of years, continued exciting prospects in areas like technology, and some of the political uncertainty around tariffs aside, the potential for deregulation, the potential for lower taxes, a further support for entrepreneurs in the US. Asia, a bit of a mixed bag. Obviously, still high growth in some parts of Asia, which are creating opportunities. Still a growing middle class, a growing consumer, which is creating opportunities in part of Asia as well. So, certainly opportunities out there. But of course, some challenges in China, some challenges with demographics in part of the region. And Europe is, lagging behind still, slow rates of growth, demographic challenges, regulatory challenges, and still a lot of political uncertainty out there. We'd be looking for some of that political uncertainty to hopefully ebb over the course of this year, potentially after the German elections. We might get a bit clearer sense of leadership within Europe, and that might support consumers, might support entrepreneurs. But for now, that ranking of US first, Asia second, Europe third seems to hold, both from a investment standpoint and in the view of our entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Now, Kiran, when we chat, I often sort of close by asking you, look, what does all this mean for investors? And I'll sort of do the same here, but I'll kind of qualify it by saying, well, what does all this mean then for these entrepreneur investors? Now, we've already explained that, many don't seek the sort of accumulation of private wealth as the sole priority, which we kind of can explain because they're interested in reinvesting. But from a sort of wealth management point of view, does this report kind of highlight that I guess it underscores that this entrepreneurial class know that maybe different skills are needed in terms of reinvestment or how they're running their own businesses successfully from the way that they manage their wealth. I guess that's good news for you and your colleagues because the demography want to come and talk to you, right, for your advice. But it's interesting that it's a little bit different than, I guess, the question I would normally ask you at this stage, right?
Yes, although I'll answer it in probably a similar way that just like with investors, it depends. And I think what's really important for all entrepreneurs is to really think about where they stand on their entrepreneurial journey. Are we at the point where reinvesting in the business and reinvesting for growth makes sense? If so, then we've seen many entrepreneurs be extremely successful from doing that. Of course, as those businesses do start to get more mature, then we do think it does make a lot of sense to then start be thinking about how to diversify, focus a bit more on private wealth, and think about legacy planning, succession planning, or the next stage for the business, whether that's an exit or transforming the business into something new, or transforming the role of the entrepreneur into more of a oversight or angel or VC kind of role. So I think, just like with investors, keeping a close focus on where you stand, where you are in your journey, and just evolving your plan over time rather than just sticking with the same thing that's worked in the past, I think is really important. Of course, UBS, with our entrepreneur clients have got some experience and expertise in how to think about this.
And that's Kiran Ganesh, bringing us to the end of this edition of the show here on Monocle Radio. Listen again and explore at monocle.com. That's where you can join the club and subscribe to Monocle magazine. And do be sure to discover more and find out how UBS can help you at ubs.com. This is The Bulletin with UBS on Monocle Radio. I'm Tom Edwards. Thanks for listening.